Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around the virtual water coolers. We talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news. And you know what? There may have been some rainy skies here in Los Angeles, but a big, bright Robert Meyer Burnett rainbow burst forth, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Meyer Burnett is here. Robert, how you doing, sir?
Wow, John, a big, bright rainbow. I mean, I am rainbow bright if ever I was something. So thank you for that.
Hey, listen, for those of you watching live, Robert and I here live, you probably have noticed that today's show is late. And the reason that today's show is late is literally this morning, 5 minutes before the show was supposed to start. Robert and I were ready to go. 5 minutes before the show was supposed to start, I start talking to Rob a little bit. And I'm like, oh, Rob, your damn internet froze again. Oh, Rob's got to get that internet looked at. Nope. Turns out it was my internet. And the internet, my entire block, all the internet in my block had gone down. And so we rescheduled the show for later day. So sorry to all of you guys who were waiting around from a little bit earlier today. But don't worry, all the questions that got sent in, we've got them. And we will address those as well as we get around to it. And listen, guys, we do have a whole bunch of stuff that we need to talk about here today. And before we get to all of our main topics, we do have some things off the top to get to, and we're going to start off the top with this. Now, Rob, one of the most celebrated movies out there, like ever. You talk to cinephiles and movie fans and stuff like that, and you talk about
Josie
favorites.
Well,
I mean, that aside, at some point in the conversation, you're going to come around to somebody bringing up the Michael Mann film Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Val Kilmer and whatnot. You're going to get around to Heat. Now, we've known for a little while here that Michael Mann has been working on a prequel novel for Heat. That's been known. However, what some people may not know is that his plan is to turn this prequel novel actually into a prequel movie. He wants to do a prequel movie of Heat. This is what he says. He says, it's a stack about 10 inches high on my desk right now, talking about his draft of the novel he's doing. We're on it, and I'm putting time into that and a screenplay I can't tell you about, but I absolutely want to make a movie of the Heat prequel. He's saying, like, he's coming right out. He wants to make a prequel to Heat. Now, Rob, I suspect to a lot of people, the notion of a Heat prequel is probably paramount to, heresy. I think there are a lot of people that would say any sort of thing you try to do with Heat or anything like that is practically heresy. It is beloved and all that kind of stuff. And you know me, I'm not a big fan of prequel material. I prefer stories to move forward. But Rob, you heard about this. You know, Mann's been working on this novel. Are you interested at all in them taking this Heat story and making a prequel out of it? What are your feelings on this?
Well, look, I worship at the altar of Michael Mann. I mean, I saw Thief with my grandfather, which is pretty shocking. His first theatrical feature in 81. And I heard the most incredible profanity I'd ever heard in a movie. And I'm sitting next to my stoic, very proper grandfather, and I felt mortified, but I knew I loved Michael Mann after that. And I've watched every one of his films. I love his work, even things that, like, you know, maybe aren't the best. But, you know, again, like you, the idea of a prequel to Heat, like, how far back are you going to go? To, like, Neil McCauley's early days before he went to the prison for the first time, or Vincent Hanna, you know, Al Pacino's character when he was a young beat cop. I mean, the problem with a Heat prequel, look, we're getting a Sopranos prequel that I'm interested in seeing.
Many Saints of Newark. Yeah, I really want to see that. Now, it would be interesting to see the idea of how somebody began a life of crime told by Michael Mann. Like somebody in the modern day, like if Heat really takes place in the mid-90s, let's say you went back to Neil McCauley and it was how he started out his crew in the 70s, for instance. So you had a period piece. Michael Mann would bring a searing authenticity to that I think could be pretty dope. But, like, does it have to be a Heat prequel? Couldn't you tell the same story? Like, I don't want them to de-age Robert De Niro now. Like, I just, this idea was, if you have a story about how a man is drawn into a life of crime and becomes as methodical and good at his job
as De Niro's Neil Macaulay's character does in Heat, that could be really interesting. But does it have to be a Heat prequel? Couldn't just be a crime thriller? I mean, that's where he lives. That's where Michael Mann has lived so many times, whether it was Thief or Crime Story or Miami Vice or Heat or even Public Enemies or even Black Hat, which I have a little bit of love for than most people, more love than most people. I think it could be a great story, but why a prequel? Like, are you going to show them both?
Well, I don't know. Maybe he just feels like the recognizability of the IP would get him a leg up, and maybe that would induce a studio to okay it and greenlight it and fund it. And I get that rationale, but I'm kind of with you on this. I'm not a big fan. I mean, there are exceptions. Of course there are exceptions. I'm not generally a big fan of the prequel route. Question here is, guys, what do you think about this? Would you be, if Mann himself was doing it, are you interested in a Heat prequel? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to another off the top. And that one is this. You know, in the last couple of years, we've had some tremendous, let's say, unorthodox comic book material making its way to the television airways, whether it's a streaming service or traditional cable, whatever. We, of course, recently had Watchmen, which was great. The Boys is absolutely fantastic. But another one that's kind of a, unorthodox one that made its way out that not a lot of people knew about, of course, is The Umbrella Academy. Season 1 of The Umbrella Academy with Ellen Page and a terrific cast was absolutely fantastic. I loved that season. And now they've announced the release date for season 2. Season 2 of The Umbrella Academy is coming out on July 31st. So we don't have long to wait. It is on its way. It's going to be getting here in just about 2 months. And I couldn't be more excited about it. And I'll tell you what, Rob, one of the things that was really exciting to me was the way they announced it. Because one of the most iconic scenes from season 1 is, of course, when they're back in the house and he puts on his old record of, was it Tiffany who sings I Think We're Alone Now? I think it's Tiffany. I think and they all start dancing. So what they did is they got all the actors in their individual homes recreating that scene to announce season 2. It put a big smile on my face. And the way season 1 ended was fantastic. It was a great cliffhanger of an ending. The characters are wonderful. The story was great. I really enjoyed it. So I'm super stoked for season 2 coming. Rob, you heard about them finally making the announcement for season 2. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I have great big love for the first season of Umbrella Academy. I love the cast. I love the storyline. I loved the apocalyptic ending, like where you go from there. And I was, I really wondered, are they going to renew this? Because look, it's got some edgy subject matter. There's a lot of button pushing, let's call it woke material, so to speak. And I really thought it was incredibly well done. And I was hoping beyond all hope that they would do a second season. They did. And to know that it's done, like, of all everyone's talking about, like everything's on a hiatus. Who knows when production will start again? To get something that I love to come back, and it's Netflix, so I can binge that shit all weekend long, son. I am so excited. And then to see this promo that they did, it just like you said, John, it just put a gigantic smile on my face, because it's like, look, we wonder, is Tenet going to open? I don't know. But knowing the Umbrella Academy it's not going to be moved. It's not going to be shunted into 2021. It's coming out in July, John. Yeah. And I can't wait. And that promo, I don't think I felt such joy and just the smile. I felt it was an inner smile, John. It was a smile that bubbled up from my heart onto my face.
And it wasn't even anything from season 2. It's like no clips from season 2. It was just the actors recreating the one scene. And I thought it was great. So the question here for you guys is simply this. Did you see this announcement video for Umbrella Academy season 2? What did you think of the first season? Not everybody loves it as much as we did, but maybe you did, maybe you didn't. What did you think about the announcement? And what do you feel about it coming out on July 31st? Knowing that it's, like Rob's saying, it's already done. It's already completed. We don't have to worry about it. It's coming out. Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. One last thing off the top for us to get to, and that is this. Rob, a couple of years ago, my second favorite film of the year was this little movie called Black Klansman. that I thought was just stupid great. Maybe in the pantheon. I think Spike Lee is a little hit and miss sometimes. Like when he makes a good movie, oh my God, he makes a great movie. But I don't love all of his movies. He's got some great classics, but I'm telling you, BlacKkKlansman was just another level for me of Spike Lee. I love that film. So I've been very excited and interested about this new film that he's been working on. We've known about for a while called Da 5 Bloods. And the first trailer dropped. And, you know, you get to see a whole bunch of Delroy Lindo. You've got Jean Reno, who I didn't even realize Jean Reno was going to be appearing in this thing. So that was crazy to see. Chadwick Boseman, of course, in there. And it's just the idea of guys today dealing with something that happened in their past is a story hook and tool that I'm actually kind of a sucker for. I love that kind of stuff. And when you're talking about the Vietnam War, I mean, it's before some of our times, but it's still something that is very much a part of the American fabric, right? The scars that the Vietnam War left. And so for a filmmaker to go back and deal with that again, and the whole notion, then you put a little bit of adventure in there, that back in the day, they got this treasure, they buried a treasure, and now decades later, they're coming back to find the treasure. There's a lot in here that I really liked. And, you know, the trailer didn't give a lot away, but I liked what I saw. So I've been really anxious to see what Spike Lee was going to follow up BlacKkKlansman with. This looks like a good follow-up. I'm excited for it. Rob, you had a chance to see this trailer for Da 5 Bloods. What do you think about it?
Look, I thought it looked great. I mean, as I was becoming a real cineast, a film fan, Vietnam movies were like everywhere. Whether I was seeing Jane Fonda and Coming Home. I mean, my mom was taking me to wholly inappropriate movies like The Deer Hunter. I mean, I was like, how old was I? Like 8? No, I was like 11. I mean, I love seeing it. But I've been fascinated. Apocalypse Now is one of my favorite movies, and we see the logo of Apocalypse Now in this trailer.
Right.
I like you. I love the idea that, and they really worked in this idea that I remember my mom actually went to Vietnam as a tourist recently, and this idea that Vietnam is now a totally transformed country, and to see they really convey how strange it is for people that were veterans of that war to now go back and see where it's at now. And that whole idea always, like you said, is very fascinating to me. Somebody dealing with their past. You have a traumatic event in a land that was war-torn. You go back now as a tourist, and people from around the world are like, oh, Vietnam's so beautiful, and this, that, and the other thing. And they're going after stolen gold, which count me in, or gold that they buried. This movie looks fantastic to me. Right up my alley. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. Question here is, guys, have you had a chance to see this trailer for Da 5 Bloods, the new film from Spike Lee? If so, what did you think about it? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, with that down and out of the way, let's now move on to our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets sent in to us by Canada Rocks, who writes, over the weekend, Fred Willard passed away at the age of 86. In my opinion, he was one of the funniest men ever to work in Hollywood. I had the privilege of meeting him in 1998 when he did an impromptu improv set at the old Tim Sim Theater here in Toronto. His career spanned from the mid-60s all the way up to the upcoming Space Force, and we just talked about that trailer. Just wanted to tip my hat to one of the all-time greats. Were you a long-time fan? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And was I a long-term fan? Yeah, because you couldn't help but become a fan of Fred Willard from the first time that you saw him. And he's been around. His career's been going on the entire time I've been alive. Fred Willard has had his career going. I was stunned when I found out about, actually, I was doing the show, Robert, on Friday. I was doing the John Campea Show on Friday. And right when I was getting ready to wrap it up, somebody had written in and said the news had just broke about Fred Willard passing away. Now, clearly not his biggest role ever in history, but I will always cherish him because Anchorman is one of my top 5 favorite comedies of all time. And just when you look at the mixture of characters in a movie like Anchorman, from, you know, a budding, emerging Steve Carell to Paul Rudd, to Will Ferrell and whatnot, every one of them, Chris Armisen was in there as well. Every one of them brought their own kind of texture to that made it really funny. And then when you went to him as the station manager, it was just always great. He, of course, was recently had the role of the one character's father in Modern Family, which is just one of the best written shows of a long time. And then, of course, he was about to appear in the new Space Force, again, working with Steve Carell. And, of course, his career goes well back beyond that. Again, it's a very sad thing to hear. But Rob, you know, you've pointed out before that when you hear about a celebrity who lived well, passing away well into their, you know, late 80s or 90s or things like that, it's hard to feel tremendously sad and more admiration about, wow, like what this guy was able to do. But also I feel a little sad because, again, I feel like we've been robbed of even more great work from him, even more great performances from him in the future. Rob, you heard about the passing of Fred Willard. What are some of your thoughts on this?
Well, John, like you said, I mean, like I always say that when someone has a life that's well lived, and Fred Willard was the kind of guy that you know, I was always of the opinion that he was like a TV game show guest kind of a person, but he really wasn't. And when he showed up, his comedic timing and his creation of characters and what he was able to do, I mean, that guy was just, he had a funny to him that not a lot of people have. There was a unique brand of sincerity to his comedy, if that makes any sense. And I always, whenever he showed up on screen, I always loved this guy. And he was always so funny. I never met him, and I didn't know anybody who knew him. But every time he showed up on screen, again, like watching the Umbrella Academy promo, I just had a smile on my face. He just made me laugh from his very presence. And I think that you have to look back, again, at a life like his. No one knew how old he was, by the way. Come on, weren't you shocked when you found out how old he was after you?
Yes, I was, as a matter of fact.
I mean, the thing is, there's so many people working in the business today, whether it's Clint Eastwood, who, by the way, is turning 90 this month. You know, there's people that are just continuing to work and set the tone. Like, I want to lead a life like Fred Willard. I mean, that's the kind of, he leaves a great body of work behind that'll make people smile forever. And he shows that you don't have to fear getting old. And that's a really cool thing.
And you know what? He's going to be the subject of a fascinating, somebody just wrote in the live chat, Jared in the live chat just put this in, and it's true. The topic of a fascinating movie trivia question for the future. Name the only actor to appear live action in a Pixar film. Fred Willard in WALL-E. He's the only actor to appear live action in a Pixar film. There's wow. So thank you to Jared in the live chat for throwing that in. That was a great one. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we lost Fred Willard, which is absolutely terrible. Guys, your thoughts on the career and life of Fred Willard. What's your favorite appearance of him, whether it's in a TV show or movie? And, you know, we are lucky enough that we still have another series coming from him with Steve Carell and Space Force. We can keep our eyes open to that. So all of our best wishes and thoughts to those family and those who knew Fred Willard. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets passed on to us from Gabriella, who writes, "Hey, John and gang. The New York Times published an article talking about a Furiosa movie directed by George Miller. They mention in the article that Miller has already started casting and has been given the go-ahead to proceed with the film. What are your thoughts?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in. Now, it should be pointed out here, he is developing it. From everything that I understand, an official final green light has not been given at this point, but he has been given development money and he is trying to put this thing together. One of the most interesting things, though, about this Furiosa spinoff is that it is going to be a prequel, And they're not going to de-age Charlize Theron. They're going to get a different actress to play Furiosa instead of Charlize, which I think is going to make a lot of people gasp. This comes to us from the folks over at People Magazine who writes, Charlize Theron will not be reprising her role as Imperator Furiosa in the upcoming Mad Max prequel film. Miller is looking to cast the role of a young Furiosa with an actress in her 20s, the Times reported. For the longest time, I thought we could just use CG de-aged on Charlize, but I don't think that we're nearly there yet, Miller said. Despite valiant attempts on The Irishman, I think there's still an uncanny valley. So that comes to us from George Miller. So there's a couple of things to talk about here. First thing is, George Miller's finally moving forward with another movie in the Mad Max world. This one's going to be Furiosa. Again, it's hard for me to get the water boiling over a prequel idea. I still wish they would just move forward, but whatever. I think a lot of people are just going to be happy that there's more movies in the Mad Max world coming from the mind of George Miller. The other one that I think is going to raise the eyebrows of a lot of people, though, here is this Charlize Theron situation. Because I don't think most people wanting and looking forward to a Furiosa, most people probably had in their heads that it would be Charlize coming back to reprise the role. And why not? She was fantastic in the first, and she's one of the world's greatest actresses. But if George Miller does indeed want this character, if the story he's got in his mind is this character in her early to mid-20s, well, then you kind of have to recast the role. And by the way, let's not forget this, Rob, that in the Legends of Hollywood hallways, there was a lot of drama that went on the set of that last Mad Max film. Not the least of which was drama specifically between Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron. There's a lot of reports that the two of them just did not like each other at all. Now, they've said things since then that, oh, no, we've put all that behind us and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if Charlize Theron was ever I don't know if the drama extended beyond that. And honestly, this show isn't TMZ, so I'm not really here to speculate that. But the point is, I was never really sure if she wanted to come back to do another one anyway. When you look at it from that point of view. But Rob, to you, what's the bigger story right here? That George Miller is indeed moving forward and starting to develop a Furiosa movie, or is the bigger story that a Furiosa movie is being developed, but it won't have Theron coming back to play in the role? What do you think about this whole thing?
Well, first of all, Killing Eve, Jodie Comer, she's an amazing performer. I love her. And I think that, I mean, Charlize Theron is in her 40s, and these movies are obviously taxing. I just love the fact that George Miller's making another movie. He is an incredible filmmaker that not just the Mad Max films, but movies like Lorenzo's Oil, and that
I love that movie.
He produced Happy Feet, but he's a man who we've not had enough movies from. So the idea that he's directing again, that alone excites me. And if it's a Furiosa prequel, bring it on. I mean, the way that Fury Road I'm a huge Mad Max fan, but Fury Road was, even if you've never seen another Mad Max movie or you didn't grow up with a Road Warrior, that movie was insane. And I loved it so much. And they did so much interesting development, the way they developed the world and the language, the slang that everyone spoke, and the doof warrior, the guitar playing, fire spewing. I mean, I love that so much. I just want him to make another movie. So I don't care who's in it. I really don't care. I just want to see George Miller behind the camera again. I want to sit in the dome again and watch a movie like that.
With or without Charlize Theron in the role. So it's going to be interesting to see how that comes. Guys, the question is, what do you see as the bigger issue here? That, oh my God, yay, George Miller's finally getting the wheels going up. Just temper that a little bit, knowing that we haven't gotten the final green light on it, but that he is working on making this movie come to life. Or is that tempered a little bit by the fact that it's not going to be Charlize Theron? How do you feel about that? Jump down into the comments section below, guys, and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Tommy Doyle, who writes, okay, John, I just got this from multiple articles saying that the creator of Deadpool, the creator of Deadpool 3, Rob Liefeld, well, he wasn't the creator of Deadpool 3, Rob Liefeld saying no movement. Do you believe him? Will Disney ever let Deadpool appear again? And will Deadpool 3 still happen. All right. Thanks a lot for sending in this, sending in the question, man. And listen, yeah, there is a bunch of stuff going on around Deadpool right now. Now, as some of you may have heard, about a week ago, Rob Liefeld came out and made some harsh comments, basically saying no Deadpool 3 right now. It's all Marvel's fault. And then he made some more comments just a couple of days ago. Now, just to set the context of this a little bit. So May 11th, or right around there, Rob Liefeld, who is, of course, one of the co-creators of the Deadpool character, wrote when, being confronted with, well, why don't we have any news on Deadpool 3 yet? Wrote, I blame Marvel. Straight up. Just, I blame Marvel. Blame Marvel that hasn't happened yet. They are the reason it isn't happening. Now, I do want to say something to that before we get to the second quote. There is one little thing I'd like to throw out there about that comment, because a lot of people got very upset when he said that. He's right. He's right. Listen, Deadpool now belongs to Disney. It belongs to them. If they wanted a Deadpool movie out tomorrow, they could put a Deadpool movie out tomorrow. And he's not wrong. Maybe the temperament in which he spoke it might have been off, but he's not wrong in a literal sense that there not being a Deadpool movie right now, and there not being, any announcements or movement on a Deadpool movie right now. Well, that is Marvel's quote unquote fault. Some people might say that's just Marvel's creative decision right now. But if you want to put the term fault, I mean, technically speaking, he's not wrong. When he says that, he's not actually wrong. But anyway, let's go on and see what he then said just a couple of days ago. In referencing back to these comments he made, he says, do I know that there is no movement on a Deadpool 3 right now? I know that. Yes. And does that worry me? No, not at all. What I did was I answered a question honestly. And what I learned this week is just lie. Just tell people everything is lollipop and unicorns and rainbows, and you'll be better off in your life because people want to be lied to. Just because some guy goes, yeah, we're still moving along, that's code for there's nothing to see here. And, I lost Robert for a second, but he's back. There's nothing to see here. So Rob Liefeld got a harsh taste of, if you answer a question in such a way that people don't want to hear what it is you're saying. And I respect that. I understand where he's coming from in this. However, he also goes on to say some other things as well. This comes to us from an article in IGN where it's something that I think Rob Liefeld's got to be a little bit careful of, because he says this, going forward, if the film does happen, Rob Liefeld says, Liefeld is a huge advocate for star Ryan Reynolds being given creative control of the Deadpool character. My opinion is Ryan Reynolds should be steering the ship and just completely handed the reins, even to the point of plugging other characters in. Give him 3 characters he can integrate and let him integrate them, he stated. If people ask what I want to see, that's where it begins. Just please don't micromanage the guy. Give him free reign. Rob Liefeld is saying, give it Ryan Reynolds free reign. To which I would, by the way, let me preface this by saying, I have met Rob Liefeld. He has been in my studio before. I don't know him deeply, but he seems like a really nice guy. To be honest, he seems like a really good. So just let me preface that by saying this. But has Rob Liefeld ever met Marvel and Kevin Feige? Give somebody else free control and free reign with no oversight and no direction from Kevin Feige? Oh yeah, that ain't ever going to happen. Like, we talk about it on this show sometimes, which is the whole notion that, you know what? People talk about studio interference and stuff like that. Listen, the reality is there is no studio that has more interference over its projects than Marvel does. The difference is it works and they win. And winning cures everything. Nobody complains about studio interference when the movies are great. When the movies are great, nobody complains about studio president Kevin Feige coming in here and meddling around, telling directors what they can and can't do. Nobody complains about that because it works and everything's great. And there is no way that Kevin Feige, because this just does not work for them, Rob. It doesn't work. There is no way that Kevin Feige says of any creator, oh yeah, you You have free reign. I won't interfere with you at all. You just go do whatever you want. It doesn't matter how it affects my cinematic universe. It doesn't matter how it affects my cinematic universe. You just go ahead and do you. That ain't ever going to happen. And listen, I love Deadpool, and everybody knows I love Ryan Reynolds, right? But that isn't ever going to happen. It's never going to happen unless, Rob, you and I have been talking and discussing for a long time about what is the fate of Deadpool. Because one of the things I think Rob Liefeld isn't taking into consideration here is that just like X-Men and just like Fantastic Four, Kevin Feige was very clear when the Fox merger happened that he's in no hurry to do anything with Fantastic Four and to do anything with X-Men, not because he doesn't love them, but because he already had 5 years of his plan blueprinted out. And that's got to include Deadpool. If he's not going to rush on X-Men and he's not rushing on Fantastic Four, why would any of us have thought that, but for Deadpool, I'll rush. I'll change my plans for Deadpool. No, none of us should be surprised. So I get Rob Liefeld is a passionate fan of this character. He's obviously one of the creators of the character. He loves seeing people enjoying Deadpool, and I get all that, and I respect all that. But I mean, what did we think was going to happen? Kevin Feige told us what he was going to do, which was take his time, and he's doing it. So I don't know why any of us are acting all surprised. But Rob, I would propose one thing. There is one thing that could move Deadpool to the head of the production line ahead of his three-clawed and super stretchy brethren of the X-Men and Fantastic World. And that is this. If they do as you and I have speculated, which is put Deadpool and keep Deadpool in his own cinematic reality outside of the main MCU. Because if you do that, it does two things. One, you can fast track a Deadpool project because you don't have to worry about how it impacts the rest of the MCU because it's not in the rest of the MCU. It doesn't fudge with Kevin Feige's plans at all. The second thing it does is it allows you, if he wanted to, it allows him to give Ryan Reynolds and his team, Rhett Reese and Werner and Paul Werner. It gives Kevin Feige the ability to say to those three, you know what? I'm going to cut you more creative freedom than I do for most of my filmmakers because what you're doing isn't going to impact or interfere with what I'm doing in the MCU. So go nuts. So Rob, I don't know if Kevin Feige in this situation, I don't know if any of this says that they're leaning more towards giving Deadpool his own cinematic reality. I don't know if it's suggesting that he's really planning on integrating it into the rest of the MCU. I don't know which way he's looking at it. But Rob, you're hearing these comments. How do you reconcile these comments, these passions with what we know about Kevin Feige and the MCU as it is? And how do you think this is all ultimately going to resolve itself?
Well, first of all, I think this is a much bigger issue with regard to Disney and Fox. I think that when Disney acquired Fox, what we have not seen yet is a strategy they had for the Fox brand moving forward. Obviously, they've changed the name back to 20th Century Studios, which was what it was called back in the 20s and 30s. And what I thought that they would do is use 20th Century Studios as a brand to release off-brand movies, meaning R-rated fare, more adult-oriented fare. And so far, they've released what Fox had in the pipeline, like Ford v Ferrari, which you and I both loved, but they haven't seemed to have any. They're not making progression. I mean, obviously, they're killing it with Hulu. They're putting on all kinds of movies on Hulu. They're doing well with their adult fare over there, but it doesn't seem like Disney wants to necessarily, or they're in no hurry to put out R-rated fare or a more adult-oriented fare underneath their Fox banner or their 20th Century banner. And I kind of get it. I mean, Disney's a company that's dealing with billion-dollar franchises. I mean, look at the year they came off of in 2019, John. That was a lot of money they made on their movies. So why would they go back to making adult movies that, were not necessarily, unless you're making $1 billion, why would Disney want to make your movie? Even Deadpool, the two Deadpool movies coming from Fox over at Fox, the first one made $750 million. The next one made 800 plus million. The problem with those Deadpool movies is I think they're problematic for Disney as a company. And they're trying to figure out, like, yeah, we like the idea that these movies are $750 or $800 million grossers, but they don't exactly fit in with Lion King remakes or Aladdin remakes or the MCU proper. You know, when you've got Vanessa and Deadpool celebrating International Women's Day, do you want to explain that to the kids? I mean, I think it's a little, honestly, I think it's problematic for Disney as a brand. And even though those are successful films, Disney can make an Aladdin and make even more money. And I really think that where Deadpool is, as lucrative as it was for Fox, does Disney want to be in that business or continue on? Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I would love to see a new Deadpool movie. I would, because I like the first two. But I don't think Disney has a way forward where they as a company could release another Deadpool movie when they've got what they've got going.
You raised some valid points. I'll tell you why I don't necessarily agree, though. And that is this. You know, when the Fox merger first happened, I never heard Bob Iger once, except for one comment about a grand umbrella thing. He quickly made a reference to X-Men.
Right.
But that was about it. Quick little reference. When you and I were in Las Vegas at the last CinemaCon.
Know what you're going to say.
You know, where all the studio heads are there, all the heads of all the movie theaters. This wasn't a quiet little dinner where somebody said something.
No.
This was on stage. Alan Horn himself, other than Bob Iger, possibly the most powerful man in Hollywood, Kevin Feige's boss, Alan Horn, stood on stage at CinemaCon and not once, not twice, but thrice, to do some Julius Caesar, thrice did he turn down the crown. Thrice. And kudos to you if you got the reference. Thrice did he bring up in a very major way Deadpool, insofar as bringing Deadpool up on the giant screen behind him. He talked about their plans for Deadpool. Then a little bit later on in his presentation, he goes, you know, somebody even else had some well wishes for us, and put up the picture of Deadpool in the mouse ears, given the peace sign, and then later put up Deadpool under the Fox banner, talking about their plans. Bob Iger himself has directly addressed the Deadpool situation on a number of occasions. You know, unlike a lot of other properties that are Fox that, you know, they've just never spoken of. There are a lot of properties of Fox that they've never once spoken of. From Bob Iger to Alan Horn to Kevin Feige to the creators. I mean, Ryan Reynolds has talked about they've already had meetings over at the Marvel office. It seems to me that Disney is committed and they want to do Deadpool. But as you point out, and as we have talked about in the past, I don't think they just knew right off the top of their heads exactly how they were going to do it. And I think, you know, the fact that Kevin Feige has said, hey, look, I had a 5-year plan already by the time we took over Fox. So the Fox stuff is going to go on the back burner. I think that just bought Disney and Marvel and Kevin all the time they really wanted or needed to figure it out as to how they're going to approach it. But I mean, Rob, I just feel like if they had any real apprehension about doing anything with it, I just can't believe they'd be so bold as to get on stage in front of all the movie theater owners in the world and talk so, and Alan Horn himself talking so forwardly about it. So I gotta believe at least I have to believe they're going to move forward with Deadpool. It's just still a question to me about how, but you're wondering if they're even second guessing themselves now?
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, they inherited a lot of traditionally R-rated franchises. Yeah. Look at the Alien franchise. You know, you've got a world-class filmmaker like Ridley Scott who wanted to do his final David Prometheus Covenant trilogy or whatever. You've got the Die Hard prequel sequel thing that they were doing, the multi-generational movie. I mean, there's been absolutely no movement. And by the way, there could be movement going, but in terms of you and I are dealing with stories that have been reported by the trades or industry journals. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, obviously, but there has been no movement at all. And obviously we're in the middle of a global pandemic, so why would there be? But there's been no talk. Like, a Deadpool 3 other than what we saw a year ago. That was a year ago, John. There was no announcement made. I mean, movies take 2 years to make, usually from the studio perspective. If they announced a Deadpool movie tomorrow, we wouldn't see it until 2022. But
at the same time, we've heard no movement on X-Men, but we don't doubt for a second they're going to bring in X-Men. We've heard no movement on Fantastic Four, yet we have no doubt they're going to be bringing in Fantastic Four.
Right.
Why do we, and I include myself in this, why do we panic a little bit more about the fact that they haven't mentioned Deadpool yet when we're not panicking about the other ones?
I think because Deadpool exists sort of outside this universe, and the creative team that was working on Deadpool, they could be making another film. I mean, look at John Wick, the John Wick franchise. I don't know why, but in my mind, I've always equated John Wick and Deadpool kind of the same way. John Wick came out, did really well. John Wick 2 was it was fast-tracked. John Wick 3 was fast-tracked. John Wick 4, I would think that in my mind, they're kind of, in my own weird way of thinking, I've always thought of them as almost parallel franchises. And the fact that we don't have a Deadpool 3 and that we aren't going to get a Deadpool 4 anytime soon, and that there's no movement you think if we didn't know that it was happening, that Ryan Reynolds wouldn't drop some, here's my aviation gin, and by the way, Deadpool 3 starts shooting before I finish this bottle, or something like that. I mean, it seems strange to me, but I really think it's because Disney has a brand that they're protecting, and at first they were enthusiastic about it, but then they started thinking, how do we sell this to our shareholders, and how do we sell this to our the people that believe in the Disney brand? How do we make a movie like Deadpool?
You put it into Fox and give him his own cinematic universe.
I know, but they don't know. They don't know what they're doing with Fox. That's my overall point.
That's a bigger topic. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any of this could just be the simple question that they are still actually, again, because I think it is important for us to keep in mind that they have made no announcements about X-Men, but we don't doubt it's coming. They've made no announcement of Fantastic Four, but we don't doubt it's coming. Do you think any of the holdup here could legitimately be that they are still legitimately like, we're going to move forward with Deadpool. We're going to move forward with Deadpool, but they legitimately still don't know whether they can bring him into the MCU or whether he's got to be off in his own universe. Could that be the holdup, or do you think it's a bigger scale question about whether they do anything with Deadpool at all?
I think it's all part of the same question, which is how do they move forward? Are they going to make R-rated movies? I mean, we're seeing manifestations of that, like with the question of like Daryl Hannah's beautiful ass. Do you show her ass on Disney Plus in a movie like Splash, which is a PG movie to begin with? I mean, I think they have an identity problem, honestly. I think it's an identity problem that became much bigger than they anticipated, because at first they're like, let's get Fox. But then they started doing the research. Once Fox was acquired, how is Disney positioned in the marketplace? How do people perceive them? With Disney Plus, we've already put Sound of Music, which is a Fox movie, up there, because why wouldn't you? Where do we go? How far do we push it? I think they have existential questions that they're grappling with, and Deadpool is caught up in that. And they have to decide, what is it we're going to do? And they own Hulu, and they're wondering like, okay, when Hulu's showing some pretty edgy fare. I mean, Parasite just dropped on Hulu, which is certainly it's an R-rated movie, even though it's a Best Picture winner. And I think they're trying to figure it all out. And I think that's where we're at with Deadpool. They need to understand or comprehend, can we have an R-rated comic book character?
I hope so, because they own FX now, and they're doing some real R-rated stuff with FX.
I know.
So I'm hoping that can translate to the movies as well. I got to believe they're still just trying to figure out what to do. I got to believe they're still planning to move forward. But guys, question is for you. What do you think about all this? First of all, we got the comments from Liefeld. We got the situation with Kevin Feige. Is it a matter that Disney is second guessing their commitment to moving forward with Deadpool? They seem pretty firm with their commitment. Are they questioning that now? Is it just a matter that they're still just trying to figure out, does he go in the MCU or does he go in his own universe? Or is it an even simpler thing? They haven't made any announcements about their Fox comic book properties yet. So, Campea, why are you freaking out over Deadpool? That's a good question. I don't know. How do you guys see it? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 4. And our fourth main topic today gets submitted to us by Edison Mureta, who writes, "Greetings, John. I read an article in Variety that was saying movie theaters across the country are starting to open back up again. Yep. Not a lot of them. I think like 50 or so. But do you think with the process starting that it looks good for July that Tenet and Milan will be able to open on schedule?" All right. Thanks a lot for sending in that question, man. And yes, listen, that has been a hot topic of discussion around these circles for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, which is the reopening of the movie theaters. When can it happen? When should it happen? And the fact that the can and should questions are two very, very different questions from each other. That's clearly been a part of it. What we can say, whether it's right or wrong, smart or dumb, is that you're right about that. The theaters in America have started slowly opening back up again. Now, the article you're referring to in Variety is actually referencing 200 theaters. 200 theaters have already begun the process of reopening or have reopened. Now, the catch of that is that about almost 150 of those are drive-ins, which I don't know why drive-ins ever had to shut down in the first place. If I'm in my car, that's about as socially isolated as you get. But on top of the drive-ins, you're also seeing brick and mortar movie theaters starting the process of reopening. This comes to us from the folks over at Variety. Movie theaters in North America are slowly coming back to life with about 200 locations open as of Friday, nearly double last weekend's total. ComScore is reporting. Drive-in movie locations are dominating the landscape with about 150 of the nation's 306 drive-in locations now open, according to ComScore. About 50 brick and mortar locations are now open. The key figure in that one there for me is the reference to the fact that in just 1 week, the number of open theaters have doubled. Is that a process we can expect to see replicated and repeated? I'm going to guess probably not. I don't think we're going to see it double every single week. I still think we're probably going to get to some point where we're going to have like a critical moment where a bunch of them will open, all kinds of stuff. But it does bring us to the main question that you asked. Does the fact that we're seeing some progress in theaters opening now, while we're still in May, does this tell us anything about possibly where the theater situation will be come mid-July by the time Tenet opens? Now, we already know that Russell Crowe movie is opening on July 1st, but let's stick to the major releases at this point. Tenet, Mulan, Wonder Woman 84. Does this give us any sort of indicator that this could be a positive sign that, yeah, I think they're going to be hold on to that? And I'm going to tell you right now, I think the answer to that question is it's too soon to tell. I honestly think it's too soon to tell. Now, look, movie theaters starting to reopen and then doubling the amount in 1 week, that's a good sign, but it's not enough to tell us definitively where we're going to be. Like, for all we know, in the next few weeks, we're going to see massive spikes, which we don't know. We may see massive drop-offs. We don't know. I just think at this point, while I am happy to see that there are more movie theaters opening and all that kind of stuff, I think it's still too early to tell whether we can put a definitive explanation point on saying, yep, Tenet's going to hit that July 17th release date. We know Warner Brothers wants to. We know Christopher Nolan wants to. We know Disney wants to put Mulan out. Actually, just last week, Rob, we talked about Bob Chapek coming out and reaffirmed that he thinks that's a good release date for them. I think it's the 24th, July 24th, at the week after Tenet comes out. They want Mulan to come out. I mean, they're still saying that. And so to me, even though the numbers sound good, honestly, for me, nothing has changed at this point. Rob, we see these numbers and these statistics opening up here. It's not just the drive-ins. We're seeing some brick and mortar theaters opening as well. Still not the main chains, not AMC, not Cinemark, not Regal. They haven't opened any of their theaters yet, but still. Do you think that you could look at this with some optimism and say this could lead to us getting those dates? Or do you feel like me that it's just still too early to tell? How do you see it?
Well, I think it's a combination of two for me. I mean, whether it's too early to tell or not, clearly we're going to have to wait and see. Obviously, Texas opened early. They've got more instance of COVID-19 spiking. It's not going away. It really comes down to, do people feel safe? And are they going to go into a room with a bunch of other people? I mean, what's it going to be like when somebody coughs? You know, are people going to feel comfortable and safe? And I think we're going to know, like you and I talked about on the show, there was an article I reported on Deadline the other day saying, is Tenet going to open on the 17th? You know, they're going to have to start ramping up their marketing campaign, as you and I have talked about. I mean, I think we'll know by June 1st and especially June 15th what's going to happen. And all of that is going to be based on what's happening in the next 2 weeks. You know, we really have to see. Some places, if you go by whatever the statistics are, or the rise if there are rising cases or whatever, it really depends. I think this was such a fast developing situation, and it still is. It could ramp down as fast as it ramped up, and it'll take time to see. But, you know, moviegoing is one place where it's all contingent upon, do customers feel safe going to the movies? And that's it, period. I mean, frankly, John, I could risk my life to see Tenet, or I'd get a scuba suit. You know, I really want to see Tenet, damn it. I want to eat popcorn, but I don't care if I have to wear like a motorcycle helmet with an airtight clasp and I can watch Tenet. I will do that. But I want to be safe. But I think we want to see these movies, man. I mean, it kills me to know that on some drive somewhere, the No Time to Die, the new Bond movie, exists, and somebody can plug it in and watch it.
Yep.
I can't.
Well, guys, the question here for you is simply this. You see these statistics and these numbers coming out. Do you feel like that should give us more confidence that this mid-July date will actually happen? We'll see Tenet on screen at the time? Or do you feel like, that might be a little bit optimistic? This is still too early to tell. How do you feel about that? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to our fifth and final main topic today. And our fifth and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Yusuf F., who writes, the Martian author Andy Weir's next novel has signed on Lord and Miller to direct, with Ryan Gosling set to star in it. I loved The Martian. You, me both, brother. Do you think Lord and Miller can recapture the magic of that film? All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And just to clarify what Yusuf is saying. So Andy Weir, the author of The Martian, of course, then Ridley Scott took that movie, made it with Matt Damon, and that movie is freaking awesome. I never read the book. My wife did. She said the book is fantastic. I know a few people have read the book. They say the book is fantastic, all that kind of stuff. Now, Andy Weir has written a new novel called Project Hail Mary, which sounds a little similar, I suppose, to what The Martian is. It's a solo astronaut in space, but this time he's on a desperate mission to save the world. Anyway, this comes to us from IndieWire, who writes, directing power duo Phil Lord and Chris Miller have been tapped by MGM to direct the film adaptation of The Martian author Andy Weir's upcoming novel called Project Hail Mary. Variety first reported the news on Friday. The project has been in the works since March, when the studio scooped up Weir's forthcoming Project Hail Mary, as the book is known, for a cool 7-figure deal. Lord and Miller's partnership with Amy Pascal, which earned them an Oscar for animated feature as producers on 2018's hit Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, helped them get the director's fast dibs on the project. So, according to the reports that we're seeing here, we are going to, in fact, see Amy Pascal, who produced for them on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, won them an Academy Award. She's also the producer on this movie. She got Lord and Miller connected to it. I don't know much about the story, other than what they have been saying in the reports. Project Hail Mary is about a lone astronaut by his lonesome, which is apparently going to be played by Ryan Gosling, who also, by the way, reportedly said he pitched the idea of getting Lord and Miller involved in this as well. Now, I don't believe they've been in the director's chair since they got fired off of Solo. I think since they got fired off Solo, I don't think they've directed anything. So this would be a return for them. And Amy Pascal wanted these guys. They made it happen. So now we're going to get them to doing it. Listen, I don't know much about the story, but I do know that the story of The Martian was remarkable, and I loved it. And what Ridley Scott did there was fantastic. Can Lord and Miller replicate what Ridley Scott did with Andy Weir's material? I don't see why not. I certainly believe it's going to be funny, because these guys know funny really well. I know they can work as producers, but it's going to be interesting to see them get back into that saddle again of the director's chair, after their last experience was that of Solo. And listen, I do personally, Rob, I know it's not the popular thing to say, but I do personally put a lot of the blame of that situation on Lord and Miller. Listen, As much as I love Lord and Miller, the fact of the matter is they started making a movie that Lucasfilm never agreed to in the first place. They agreed to make one kind of movie. They started making another movie. And they eventually got kicked off the project. Whatever. I've been fascinated to see these guys get back in the saddle again to see what they can do. And I think a project like this sounds very exciting to me. Put in Ryan Gosling, who, you'd forgive me, but it sounded a little bit like they were talking about First Man. Ryan Gosling's playing a solo astronaut, huh? Okay. Yeah, we've seen that movie before. But I think there's nothing bad about this. I think this is just exciting stuff from top to bottom. But anyway, Rob, you about hear this report. What do you think about Project Hail Mary and having Lord and Miller attached to it?
Well, look, The Martian, especially the extended version, is one of my favorite movies of the last decade. I mean, bar none. I loved it. I thought it was a terrific, people would say, well, there's stuff that was left out of the book, but I thought it was a terrific adaptation of the book. I love Ryan Gosling. I love Lord and Miller. They've made some great movies. Although it does sound a little like Ad Astra, kind of, and I was a little disappointed by that. But I'm all for this. I mean, it sounds terrific to me. One of the things, though, I worry about him, it's a solo movie. I mean, 21 and 22 Jump Street were so great. The chemistry, the buddy cop, all of that, I loved. And I would love to see that kind of, that camaraderie, that kind of comedic interplay. But hey, if Gosling himself said they should make it, then maybe they're all on the same page and we're going to get something really special. And all you have to say to me, dude, is space, and I'll watch it.
Space, and I'm in. How about Space Force? Does that get you in? You're in for that too. All right. Well, so am I. The trailer was great,
dude. If I wasn't too old, I'd join the Space Force tomorrow. I wouldn't even have to go to a recruiting center. Just sign me up. I'll walk right in.
This question here is for you guys. What do you think about the sounds of this project? And what do you think about the fact that we got Lord and Miller now stepping in? First film we're going to see them directing in a while. I think this is pretty exciting. Maybe you have some apprehension about it. Jump down into the comments section below and let us know what you guys think about that. All right, guys. With all of that stuff down and out of the way, Robert and I are now going to move on to take your live questions. And there are two different ways to get in your live questions. The first and the best way to get your live questions in is to simply use the tip link that you can see in the top of the description of this video. You can just go click on that. It's streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You can go into that. Or if you can't use that, you can use the super chat feature on YouTube. Either way, you'll be getting your question in and you'll be supporting the channel while you're doing it. Now, before we get to that though, as Robert and I do every day, we're going to take just a short couple of minute break here. We're going to stretch our legs, rest the voices, got to go refill the old drink, give you guys a chance to run and use the bathroom. So if you guys will hang tight with us for just a couple of minutes, Robert and I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for your patience and indulgence as Rob and I took just a quick little break there. But for now, let's get on in and start taking your live questions. We're going to start things off here with Stubble McShave, who wrote in, I saw that Nolan had 20% of Tenet's first dollar gross. What does that mean? Okay, so here's what that means. It means that the studio's stupid and Christopher Nolan is incredibly brilliant. So first dollar gross basically means this, that the moment a movie starts taking in money, not making money, but taking in money, you start getting paid. Now, there are a lot of things like back-end points, like you get a certain percentage of the profit off of a movie. You know, if a movie profits $100 million and you had 1 point on it, well, then congrats, you get $1 million bonus if it made that much profit. First dollar gross is something that movie studios should never agree to, but they do on some occasions, which basically says this: you don't have to wait until the studio starts making profit to getting paid. The moment that a movie makes $100 million in box office, it doesn't matter if the studio's not getting any of that. Once the movie, if you've got like say 10% first dollar gross, guess what? When that movie makes $100 million in the box office, you just made your first $10 million. Now, there can be modifications to that, and there are in some cases. You know, Arnold Schwarzenegger had first dollar gross deals. Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks had very lucrative first dollar gross deals on Saving Private Ryan. Girl from Speed. And the girl from Speed. Sandra Bullock. That's it.
Sorry, I was gonna say,
Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock had a first gross deal on Gravity, and she ended up making $50 million on that movie. Leonardo DiCaprio, I'm trying to remember the movie that he did. It was the Christopher Nolan film.
Inception.
Not Interstellar. What's it? The other I one?
Inception.
Inception. He had a first dollar gross. He turned down his $20 normal standard fee and he took first dollar gross. He ended up making well over $50 million on that thing. It's part of the reasons why studios spend too much money on these movies by giving these first dollar gross deals that they really shouldn't do. And they're really going to be in the hole now to make money on Tenet because they gave Christopher Nolan 20% first dollar gross from what we understand. It is a bad thing to do, but great if you're Christopher Nolan. Rob, I know you have had a lot of first dollar gross deals in your career, yes? I'm assuming?
Oh, yeah. First dollar gross for something that made $5. So that was great. And so, no, look, this is an astonishingly, I was reading about this and talking about it. I'm like, to have this kind of a deal is unbelievable. I mean, it like harks back to Jack Nicholson's deal with Batman back in '89. I don't even think his deal was this rich. I don't think it can be stressed how rich this deal actually is. This might be one of the richest filmmaker deals in history. I don't know, but 20% of a first dollar gross. If this movie grossed $1 billion, that means he makes $200 million before anybody gets to see a chunk of their. Now, here's the thing I don't understand, though, John. I'm not really sure of this. Is that the first dollar gross of the studio's take? And not including what the theater carves out, the exhibitors carve out for themselves? Or is it literally the first dollar gross of all of the movie? Like, whatever the movie takes in, he gets 20% of that. Not 20% of what the studio takes home, but 20%. I think it has to be what the studio takes home.
There have been several. For instance, the Gravity deal with Sandra Bullock was first dollar gross pure, like before the theaters took their take and all that kind of stuff. There are others that, for instance, the Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, they got 40% first dollar gross of Saving Private Ryan that they split between them, so 20 each. But I believe that was a situation of it was first dollar gross post theatrical cut and stuff like that. But still, either way,
money,
it's a lot of money, Rob. It's a lot of money. Okay, money that you and I were never see in our lifetimes. All right, next up, Marie Seifring writes, the stage show Hamilton was filmed while on tour. This recording of the stage show will hits Disney Plus on July 3rd. I cannot wait. Thanks. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day, about this Hamilton show going to be on Disney Plus. They are desperately in need of original content right now. But Rob, I was thinking about this. Broadway's very popular. I mean, these shows are great. It's relatively inexpensive to bring in camera rigs and crews to set up and just shoot a production of this thing. Could this be a model moving forward for a new way of creating low cost, but maybe high yield entertainment for the screen? Could Hamilton set a new precedent, do you think? What do you see as the ups and downs?
Well, not everything is Hamilton. First of all, I mean Hamilton is a crossover success like we haven't seen. I mean, the idea that it's literally hip hop music and it appeals to many demographics. I think Hamilton is unique, but maybe, like, I have to say, beloved shows. I mean, I have to tell you, I wish when I was growing up, I was lucky that my parents took me and my grandparents took me to most of the traveling companies of Broadway shows. I got to see most of the big shows growing up, but I would have liked to have seen more of them. There were some that I never saw, smaller shows. I wish that they would I wish every Broadway show was shot with, multiple cameras. I mean, if I was doing it, you'd shoot like 20 different performances and then intercut the best ones so you get the best versions of everything. But once you had those, if there's now a venue, if this does well on Disney Plus, I would love to see more Broadway shows captured. I'd love to watch them with those original casts. Because, I watch the Tony Awards every year, and I'm like, I really would like to have seen that. But, who knows when it's going to come to my town or when I'm going to go to New York next, or even if I can get tickets.
All right, let's move on here. Ben Rayner writes, hey, John, I've been doing a franchise binge. First, I did Harry Potter, nice. Then I did Star Wars. Now I'm on Indiana Jones. By the time you read this, I'm on Last Crusade. I have to ask, better character for you, Indy or Han? Hope all is well. Listen, I've said this before. Obviously, my favorite movies are the Star Wars ones. But as far as which is the better character, Indiana Jones. I think Indiana Jones is the better character. And by the way, we've gotten a lot more of the character of Indiana Jones. We know so much more about him and his background and all that kind of stuff. I just think Indy is the more interesting character. I don't know, Rob, what do you think?
I agree with you. I mean, Indiana Jones is far more fleshed out. We know a lot more about him. Look, I love Han Solo, but I have to say...
So do I.
In Star Wars, Han Solo is almost a supporting character. Luke's on screen a lot longer. Ben's there longer. They pick up Han along the way. Han's a great character, but Indiana Jones is the star of his own movies. And other than Solo, Han Solo was a ensemble character, whereas Indiana Jones is one of the great characters in cinema history.
I agree.
Not that Han isn't, but I like Indiana Jones better, I think.
All right, next up, Major Tom writes, you, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. Oh, this is Rocky. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Listen, Rocky Balboa is a great movie. It is. Shakespeare, it is not. But that line in that movie, which I believe they played in the trailers, Rob, was a line I wanted to stand and applaud when it was spoken. Because it was spoken like Aristotle. It was spoken like Socrates. It was spoken like a true Greek philosopher. It ain't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. It is a brilliant line from an underappreciated movie, because I think that Rocky Balboa movie is great. Does it stand out to you, or what? Like, how do you see it?
I do too. No, I liked Rocky Balboa a lot, especially coming on the heels of Rocky V, which the less said, the better.
Yeah, so, Tommy Gunn. All right, yeah, next up, Peter Tennant writes, hello, John, and Peter sends in a $50. Thank you so much for that, Peter, for supporting the channel on that level. I appreciate that, man. Peter writes, hello, John. Love your show. Thank you so much, Peter. My question is, how do you download a movie to your computer that you purchase online like Google Play or YouTube? I would like to have for me online. Well, I mean, that's a bit of a predicament. Number one, I've never had to, because I just always know it's on Google Play. Like that's my personal store of choice is Google Play. Other people use Yahoo or Vudu or whatever else, but I use Google Play. I never have to worry about it. It's always available to me. Hell, even when my internet went out earlier today, I could have just streamed it on my phone if I wanted to. I could just plug my HDMI adapter into my phone and I could have watched, my Google Play movies there if I wanted to. So I've never even attempted to do it. Also, I do have to admit that even if I did know how to do it off the top of my head and I have some ideas, I can't share those because I'd be actively sharing with you information about how to circumvent copyright and how to circumvent user agreements, which I cannot do. So while I very much appreciate the question, I'm just gonna have to say I'm not sure why you would need to, but if you do need to, I'm gonna have to leave you to your own devices to do that because that's not something I can do. I can't sit here and tell you how to get around copyright or how to get around a user agreement. That would be inappropriate for me to do. So I can't do that, unfortunately. But best of luck as you're doing that. And again, dude, seriously, thank you so much for thinking to write in and for supporting the channel on that level, man. I appreciate that. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, if you like Matt Berry from What We Do in the Shadows, Laszlo, I do. He's very good. You should watch the IT Crowd sometimes. That's the first thing. I was watching it with my friend. I was watching What We Do in the Shadows with a buddy of mine who hadn't watched it yet. And he's like, hey, he's from the IT Crowd. I love that show. Anyway, so that's kind of funny. You should watch the IT Crowd sometimes. He's in the second season on a supporting character and is hilarious. My second favorite comedy TV show after Parks and Rec. Love my Star Wars brother. Long time watcher. Well, thank you so much for that, Anonymous. And dude, I'm just telling you, I just watched the latest episode of What We Do in the Shadows a couple days ago with Mark Hamill. Oh my God. Whenever I hear Mark Hamill is going to guest in something, I get a little bit nervous, to be honest, because I revere Mark Hamill so much that it's like, oh, please be good in it. Please be good in it. Like, not that I should ever doubt it, but I just get a little bit nervous about it. So, oh my God, he's so funny in this one. Him and the last, have you seen this episode yet, Rob?
Yes, I have.
One alcoholic human beer, please. I just about died. He was so good in that. And it's like, I didn't even know he was in the episode. It's just, but he first shows up in the episode and they're talking and I'm like, wait, that's Mark Hamill. And Anne's like, it's not Mark. Oh my goodness, it is Mark Hamill. I couldn't believe it. Did you know he was in it before starting watching it?
I gotta tell you, it's the only episode I've watched of this season, and that's why I watched it. I feel terrible. I'm admitting it to you. I read that he was in it and I want to go see it, but I have to catch up with the rest of it.
You do. You absolutely have to catch up on the rest of it.
I love it. I love it so much.
All right, next thing up. Matthew Montes writes, hey, John, my local theater in the LA area has been selling curbside concessions, popcorn, nachos, etc. over the lockdown. The line of cars is always long, and I suppose a little profit is better than none. Any idea why AMC hasn't done something like this? I think it's a couple of different things. One, I'm going to guess the theater you have is probably not a chain. I'm going to guess it's probably not a big chain. There are, what's the word I'm looking for? There's liability issues, but also... Right. I just don't think there is profit to be made. For them to literally unlock the doors, turn on the lights, hire staff, do whatever it is, the legal things they have to do to ensure safety and all that kind of stuff, hazard pay or whatever just for being there. On top of all that, I honestly, it's a great sounding thing, but I honestly don't think there's money there to be made. I think a smaller operation could do that a lot easier, and I wish it was close to where I live because I would go and take advantage of that. But I just think there's too many complications to doing it. We just think, just turn on the lights and start selling popcorn. There's actually a lot of red tape that has to be cleared and a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through. But I don't know, Rob, do you think that's something they should look at doing?
Should they? Yes. I mean, it's always worth looking at. But again, it depends. I mean, there's so many different issues involved, mostly financial, that it has to make sense on a number of different levels. So,
Yeah. And again, the liability part cannot be understated because all AMC needs is one person to say, I got coronavirus and I didn't have it before I picked up popcorn from your guys and now I'm suing you for $1 billion.
I mean, that's what I'm fascinated, John, by, like you're saying, the liability issues, which, by the way, are the exact same issues facing film productions, because one of the big things about movie productions is getting insurance.
Yep.
And one of the things it's the same issue. And if somebody claims that they got coronavirus at a studio, I don't know how you prove that, but there's got to be, I don't know how anyone is going to work around the insurance issue. I really don't. I don't know restaurants, bars, anywhere where people gather publicly to work together. It's the same problem that's facing all businesses and theater and studio productions.
Yeah, government is going to have to come up with some sort of legislation that says, okay, look, we're going to put out guidelines by which businesses need to follow. But then they have to put in place protections for those businesses that says, if the businesses follow these guidelines, they are indemnified from legal action against them because we as part of the public, we just have to accept that, hey, listen, if we step outside our front door, we are taking, no matter how small we get the risk, we are taking some form of risk by going out. And that if movie theaters or restaurants, whatever, if they follow the proper guidelines, and yet you still get something from one of their places, you cannot hold that place responsible. I think they're going to have to come up with some sort of legislation like that in these unprecedented times. And again, unless it gets found out that the business didn't follow the guidelines, in which case that would then expose them to liability. Anyway, Vicarious writes, "Hey, John, hope you and Ann are doing well. We are, thank you very much. I recently watched The Patriot on Netflix and not seeing it for years, and wow, I am still in awe of Jason Isaacs' performance as Colonel Tavington. Jason Isaacs is awesome. He has quickly become one of my favorite guys in the business. Like whether it was that little show that I keep forgetting the name of that only lasted one season, where he's in a car accident with his wife, his kid, and his kid dies, but then when he goes to sleep and wakes back up, he's in a different reality where his wife dies. That show was awesome, and it only lasted one season. Whether he's in that, whether he's in, hell, I even liked him in Star Trek Discovery, and Rob, I won't get us into that whole debate again, but I loved him.
No, he was good.
In Harry Potter.
Hey, I loved him in Star Trek Discovery. He was good.
Yeah, I like that character a lot. I like that character. I'm really a big fan of Jason Isaacs. I'm telling you, I'm getting there. Anyway, performance as Colonel Tavington. He really makes you hate him on the movie, but in such a good way. He's just such a good actor, man. I'm glad you're able to get caught up on those ones, Vicarious. Canada Rocks writes, in 98, I was doing an improv set at the old Tim Sim Theater here in Toronto. Fred Willard was hanging out backstage, and then he joined the set right after mine. Will always regret that I came this close to working with a legend. Rest in peace, Fred. And again, it's just, from a selfish point of view, it is just great that we know we're going to get to see him one more time. And if there's anything else he's filmed that we haven't had a chance to see on screen yet, but we know we got Space Force coming, and I'm already looking forward to that, to see him on there with Steve Carell and John Malkovich. And, it's just, at least we got that, and it was a life well lived. All right, Henri Mertens writes, big fan of Scooby-Doo, but I hated Scoob. Felt like an odd mix of the Emoji Movie, the meanness of Birds of Prey, and the worst tendencies of Michael Bay. Also, it's as if they studied Pixar and then did the opposite, but has one great joke about a certain MCU actor. Yeah, I never bothered watching. I have no desire to watch that movie until I'll probably check it out once it becomes like a regular $4 rental. I might check it out. But, Rob, I don't know if you heard, but I was reading a bunch of reviews, and like half the reviews are saying this movie stinks. And the other half of the reviews, even the good reviews, were, if you automatically love Scooby-Doo, you could dig this movie. But for the rest of you, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's what one critic in particular wrote. Like, if you're not already predisposed to loving anything that's Scooby-Doo, I don't know what to tell you, because this isn't for you. But then most of the positive reviews I read were like, as a massive Scooby-Doo fan, you might be able to appreciate this because of this, this, and this. But I've always had the idea, Rob, that if you have to be a pre-existing diehard fan of a property in order to enjoy the movie, I've always felt then you didn't do your job making the movie right. Because, Infinity War, Captain America, Endgame, these are all movies that people who have never picked up a comic book in their life can go and watch and enjoy. And I don't want to slam too hard on Scoob because I haven't seen it yet. For all I know, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to love it. So I can't say anything definitively. But just as the general premise, if you make a movie and only people who are hardcore into that subject matter can possibly enjoy the movie, then I think you failed in your job in making that film. I don't know. What do you think about that? Well,
look, I agree. A movie should appeal to everybody. I mean, great movies, that's the beautiful thing about movies, whether, if you're a diehard Indiana Jones fan or whatever, Raiders of the Lost Ark works not because you love Indiana Jones. It works because it's a great movie. that establishes character, it establishes situations. I mean, think about all the great movies, John. Did you know who the Ghostbusters were before you saw the movie Ghostbusters? No.
Nope.
And a movie a great movie should work for everyone, whether you know the characters or not. The film itself should give you enough to understand, okay, what's going on. Now, that's not to say someone's going to be like, well, Rob, it is this week, the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back. Would Empire have worked if you hadn't seen Star Wars? Well, perhaps not, but it is a direct sequel, and it's saying that, like, okay, but with Scooby-Doo, every unique adventure, you shouldn't. What does that mean? I mean, I think it should work whether you like Scooby-Doo or not. It's a mystery story, isn't it?
And again, I want to measure what I say because I haven't seen the movie, and I may love it when I see it. But I remember I got turned off from this movie when months ago I heard the story about how in one of the first meetings after a Scoob project got green light to move ahead into development, that in one of the meetings with one of the executives said, you got to make sure there's superheroes in it. To which at the original concept did not have superheroes. The original concept of what Scooby-Doo was not going to be a superhero movie. And it was insistent, kids only like superheroes today. Make sure it's got superheroes. Make sure it's revolving around superheroes. But what does superheroes have to do? I mean, yeah, they did a crossover with Batman back in the 60s, but what does this have to do? What does Scooby-Doo have to do with superheroes? You just got to make sure you have superheroes. And I remember from that moment on, I'm like, I wrote the movie off in my head. At that point, I'm just like, okay, so I give up on this movie. Again, though, I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I'll love it, and I will talk about it when I do, but I just have no interest in paying $20 for it when I can wait for it to come out later. All right, let's keep moving here. An anonymous viewer sends in $5 just to be supportive. Thank you, anonymous viewer. Frankie Gouge writes, Gouge writes, I think that the new Hollywood Netflix series would be right up Rob's and yours alley, set up in post-world Hollywood where the way of making movies is changing. I'll tell you what, Frankie, Rob, I don't know if you've seen Hollywood yet. I've
watched a little of it.
Okay, let me tell you this, then I want to hear your reaction. My wife started watching it. There's a lot of stuff my wife likes in movies and TVs, particularly things that are filthy. My wife likes the filthy. She really does. And also, whenever she sees, Ryan Gosling, the first thing she said when she saw Ryan Gosling and Ryan Reynolds on screen together at some event, the first thing my wife yelled was, "Kiss!" That's what my wife said. She loves all that kind of stuff. So my wife started watching Hollywood, and I saw a few minutes of it here and there, but that was about because I was working while she was doing that. So she got about 3 or 4 episodes in, and then I asked her like the other day, I said, how's that Hollywood going? She goes, I gave up on it. I said, really? Why? She goes, wow. She goes, the whole show is just sex. She goes, I like sex, but that's all it is. It's like everything that's done in the show is to set up a raunchy sex scene. And she said all this stuff about, like, particularly this Asian American filmmaker and trying to do this in Hollywood. She goes, it's all lost. Like all the message of it is all completely buried under every scene is scandalous. And it's just, I just got tired of it really fast. So that's my exposure to the show. It's from my wife saying it was everything meaningful in it gets drowned out by the overusage of the filthy, which you should never say. But anyway, Rob, as you've seen a few episodes, what's your take on it? Because I haven't really seen it much myself.
I'll say it's nicely done, but here's my objection to it. Hollywood history is something I've been interested in my whole life, and this is an alternate Hollywood history. It's turning everything on its ear. Like, what if these marginalized voices were not marginalized and they were able to shape the movie industry into the way it was? And I'm like, well, that's interesting. It's like the Man in the High Castle with the filthy, and everything is flipped. But I think it does a disservice to actual Hollywood history. And I understand, why should I care? But there's something weird. It's like this bizarre. There are going to be people that believe this is actual Hollywood history. I'm sorry. And I think in a way, I get what they're going for. I totally understand. They're trying to make a point about today by creating this alternate vision of what the past could be. But I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing. And like your wife said, Anne is a very smart lady. And I think that, again, it seems a little too crass. And Hollywood is a very crass place. And for me to say that I don't know what that says about me, but maybe I'm getting, but I agree. I mean, I was disappointed in it.
All right. Let's keep moving on here. Willow writes, wait, the ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood isn't real? I was just talking about that the other day. What's next? Are you going to tell me that Hitler didn't actually get gunned down in a theater? Rob, this got brought up because I literally had a conversation just, I think, a week or two ago with somebody who really didn't know. Somebody brought up a question of Sharon Tate, and it reminded me that just like a week or two ago, I actually had a conversation with somebody who did not realize when they watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that wasn't the actual ending, that Sharon Tate did not go on to live happily ever after, that she and her housemates were brutally murdered that night. And it's just a kind of another look on that. But it's kind of crazy because that's far enough ago in our history and not as well known as, World War II and Hitler, that there are some people who actually watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and didn't realize it was fiction.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing that's true of Hollywood. And I think it sort of speaks to our culture that this revisionist history will be believed, because John, in 50 years, people are going to watch that and take it as gospel. We're going to be so far away from the actual events that there's going to be nobody left who was actually there. So you can make people believe anything. And that's a little dangerous and a little disconcerting to me.
Do you think we might get to the point where a movie like Inglourious Bastards or a movie like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might be required to have some sort of disclaimer at the front of the movie? The following is a reimagination of real events that took place. Do you think it might get to that point? Because we watch Inglourious Bastards and we know Hitler didn't die that way. I mean, so whatever, but the fact is there's a lot of people who don't know the history of Sharon Tate who actually walked away from that movie thinking that, should movies that rewrite history like that, or TV series or whatever, should they put a little disclaimer that this particular movie is, while based on some real historical characters, this movie is a fictitious thing? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you something. This is going to seem strange, but it harks back to Interstellar, the movie Interstellar. When I read the original script for Interstellar, there's a little bit of it in the finished film where people don't believe the moon landing took place. And the idea that the moon landing has there are conspiracy theorists, and I, being raised a Jew, Holocaust denying is a very real thing. And I think that there are people.
Wait. You're Jewish? I
was raised a Jew, sir.
You and I had this big long conversation about that. Anyway, please continue.
Yes, I know. And what's really interesting about, I was adopted into a Jewish family.
Right.
What's really interesting about the whole thing is that history, look, they say it's written by the winners anyway, but I do think that we now have all of these, like some people, one day, John, I'm going to meet somebody that thinks the man in the high castle was true. Like, I didn't know that Germany and Japan divided up the United States after World War II. I didn't know that. I mean, how far away are we? It's so important that we preserve the historical record to the best of our ability. Luckily now, there's so much material. Like, we're lucky we live in the time that we live in because history is very well documented. But I think preserving history is really important. And that's why, we all want to believe it was different than it was. But Sharon Tate, it would have been great if she lived. But people need to remember what actually happened to her, which was horrific.
Yeah, another show, one that I really like, actually, is For All Mankind. That's another one that takes a revisionist look at history, makes a really fun, compelling, engaging show out of it. But you know what? Now that I think about it, I think they do put a little bit of a disclaimer on that. I think they might have done that. Okay, that's interesting. All right. Next up, D.A. Miller writes, hello, John. With James Cameron's production price tag of Avatar 2 and 3 of $250 million each, which, by the way, I haven't heard that confirmed. Just to be clear, I have not heard that confirmed. But let's go with that for a minute. That makes these two That makes these two of the most expensive movies ever made. How much will they have to make before we even hear of them saying 4 and 5? Thoughts and stay filthy. Well, let's go on the assumption for a second that that is the price tag, which, by the way, I don't know that that's ever been confirmed, but let's say just for argument's sake, let's say it is. At $250 million, they're probably looking at, and I'm going to go in the conservatively, I'm going to go in the neighborhood of just a break even. They're probably guessing what they'll spend on marketing, using some history as some projections. I'm going to guess probably 575. I'm thinking they're going to have to make 575 at the box office just to break even.
Wow.
And then anything after that is profit. So yeah, I think as long as they're profitable, I think if Avatar 3 hits 600 million, they'll be disappointed at 600 million, which is almost insane to say, Rob. It's almost insane to say making 600 million and being disappointed. But with that type of a price tag, I think if they make 600 to 700 million, I think that just clears the way forward. I mean, if this one comes out and makes $400 million, you're not going to see Avatar 4 or 5. But if they get to the 6 to 7 range, which I fully, I don't think Avatar 2 is going to have much trouble joining the $1 billion club. I don't think it'll join the $2 billion club, but I think it'll make $1 billion and they'll be fine. I don't know, Rob, how do you see that?
Well, it just, James Cameron just knows how to make a movie. When you sit down and watch the movies he's directed, the way he shoots, the way he can edit, his use of visual effects, he has a way to tap into that classical storytelling that even the smartest person or the most meat and potatoes guy, somebody who doesn't love the movies but will go once a year, will be sucked in. James Cameron is just, you can't count him out. And I think whatever he delivers, it's going to kick ass, and it kicks ass at a very, I don't think his movies have necessarily been the smartest movies in the world, but I can't take my eyes off a James Cameron movie. I really can't. Just like your favorite, I watched True Lies the other day.
All-time favorite action film, baby.
Dude.
All-time favorite action film.
And I get it's a Bond riff. That movie starts, you can't stop watching it. I mean, his ability to put together shot choices, and they're just monumentally entertaining movies. And I'm sure that he's going to do the same thing. I don't even know if there's anybody that's been working. Remember the last movie that we saw him make? I mean, what was our last James Cameron directed movie?
Wasn't it Avatar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, I think he's going to blow us all away. I really do.
I hope he does. All right, just 2 more questions here, and then we got to let Rob go because he's got things he's got to do this afternoon. The Sock writes, you don't know what true pain is until you bought or rented a movie and it went straight to streaming the next day on a service you already have. I know. That's happened to me once. Where I actually rented a movie to watch, and then 3 or 4 days later, I was just skimming through Amazon Prime and realizing that the movie I had just rented was actually on Amazon Prime for free. So I had that happen. I'm sure that's the pain a lot of the viewers have felt as well. All right, Johnny5619 writes, hey guys, it's my birthday. Happy birthday, Johnny. May you have a tremendous day and a tremendous year ahead of you, my friend. So I was visiting my dad, and he was watching Jingle All the Way for some reason, and I asked what happened to that guy. He played a great douche. Then my dad told me about Phil Hartman, the late, great Phil Hartman. What is y'all's favorite movie / SNL skit? Thanks, as always. Phil Hartman. It's one of the first celebrities passing where I was like, no!
Yeah, I know.
He was... and when I first think of Phil Hartman, I don't even think of Troy McClure on The Simpsons. I'm Troy McClure. He was iconic as that voice. I wasn't even his SNL stuff, although I can think of a lot of his SNL skits. For whatever reason, when I think of Phil Hartman, my mind immediately goes to the Mike Myers film, So I Married an Axe Murderer, as the park ranger for Alcatraz. They ripped out his eyes, and he pissed into his empty ocular cavity. Follow this way. I just think of Phil Hartman in that, and I don't know why it was a small little part in the movie. I don't know why that's the one that jumps out to me the most, but Phil Hartman was so great and just gone way too soon. Rob, when you think of Hartman, what's some of the first stuff that comes to your mind?
I think that's a pretty great one. But I loved him as a sketch performer because he was so versatile. you know,
Yeah.
and I really loved him. But wait a minute, do we have the question about answering our favorite sketch movie from that was a movie that was from a sketch that was turned into a movie? Was that the question?
Oh, let me read it again. He said, wait a second. Dad told me about film. What's y'all's favorite movie / SNL skit? Thanks as always.
Because I was thinking like, I don't know if you meant it from just Phil Hartman. Because
I'm guessing he probably meant from Phil Hartman.
Oh, because I was thinking like Blues Brothers and Wayne's World are my favorites.
Oh yeah, well those ones come out there. You know what's funny? I don't know why. I was watching the other day. Ann and I were just killing some time. We were flipping through the channels, and I came across like this marathon of Pawn Stars. I used to watch Pawn Stars all the time, and I got watching this one thing. There was like the biggest purchases they made in a certain year. And one of them was the actual car from Wayne's World that they're driving in when they start singing Bohemian Rhapsody. They bought the original car, which I thought was hilarious. Actually, you know what, Rob? Let me get this one more in here because I think this is partially for you as well. Gerald Vanderpool writes, I just watched a 2004 movie called Shade with a killer cast, Sylvester Stallone, Stuart Townsend, whatever happened to that guy, Jamie Foxx, Gabriel Byrne, another missing in action guy in one of my all-time favorite movies, The Usual Suspects. A delicious-looking Thandie Newton and a tightly stretched-faced Melanie Griffith. Oh, don't be mean. Anyway, Rob, I just saw a Stallone movie from 2004. I don't even recognize this film. I got to assume this is a movie that never got into theaters. Are you familiar with the 2004 film Shade?
I do not know this movie, and just doing a cursory glance.
I was expecting you to say you own the Blu-ray.
I do not own the Blu-ray. What a great its box office. It cost $10 million to make, and it made $459,000 at the box office.
It probably opened in like 4 theaters, though. I'm guessing it didn't have like a 1,000 theater rollout, though, right? Like it was probably smaller.
Yeah,
if at all.
It sounds good, like underground poker game, but boy, yeah, it was open. It says Shade was open for only 5 weeks in 6 theaters.
There you go.
Grossed $459,000 in worldwide ticket sales.
That's not bad for 6 theaters. That's not bad. That's not terrible for 6 theaters.
John, it has 67% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Gabriel Byrne, not only in The Usual Suspects, but in a truly great pseudo sequel to The Three Musketeers, Man in the Iron Mask. He played D'Artagnan, an older veteran D'Artagnan in Man in the Iron Mask. I like him a lot.
Wait a minute. Look at it. Listen, you know who else is in this movie? Michael Dorn, who played Worf on Next Generation. Hal Holbrook is in this movie. Glenn Plummer, who's a great character actor. Patrick Bachau, who's been in a million things. Bo Hopkins is in this movie. I mean, this is crazy. I want to see this movie now just to see it. This
was around the era when Stallone's career was in a weird place. Like he was doing a number of like straight to video things, but it's weird to have a cast that big, and I've never even heard about it. All right.
Right.
Anyway, Rob, I know you've got some professional work you need to go and do. So we will let you go for now, and we will have you, of course, back on here again tomorrow. But in the meantime, brother, where can people follow you and your adventures online till you're back on tomorrow morning?
I know. You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work. And I'll be on tonight with Elizabeth doing Whining About Movies, episode 29. We're talking about Highlander tonight.
One of my all-time favorite movies.
Elizabeth had never seen it until last night.
There can be only one. All right, Rob, thanks a lot for being here, man. And I will talk to you again in the morning, my friend.
All right, man.
See you later. All right, guys, Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett for your enjoyment. And we still got some time here, so we're going to keep on going through your questions. So let's keep right on rolling here. And we got Saberwolf who writes, I've officially upgraded to becoming a Patreon member. Thank you so much for that, Saberwolf. I appreciate that, dude. I'm honored to support the channel. I watch every day. I feel as if I have been invited into the Jedi Council, but John must ask the question, as Anakin once did, do I get granted the rank of Master? Well, no, seriously, man, thank you so much. And, you know, somebody else brought up the Patreon supporters the other day. You know, I don't mention the Patreon campaign very often. You know, we have this great group of Patreons. I mention our supporters all the time because our Patreon supporters are amazing, and I love it when I get to interact with them. but I don't actually promote it very much. I don't know why I don't promote it more, but I should. But listen, man, thank you so much for finding out about it, and thank you for becoming a Patreon supporter. I really appreciate that very much, the fact that you want to go above and beyond like that to support the content that you enjoy watching. I appreciate that. Rob appreciates that. Everybody on the team here appreciates that. So thanks so much for that, man. I really appreciate it, dude. All right, next up, Drew H. writes, one thing I always wondered, for the Rogue One trailers, who composed the music? I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. The music, especially in the second trailer, was amazing. That was Desplat before he departed. See, I don't know. Sometimes music gets composed for a trailer that is not from, actually, oftentimes we'll hear music in a trailer that isn't in the actual movie. And a lot of times there will be a trailer company that actually will score their own music sometimes, or license music to put in there. Like, for instance, the first trailer for Lord of the Rings Return of the King had this incredible music in it, and I didn't realize it was from Requiem for a Dream. It was the music from Requiem for a Dream. It wasn't even the music to Lord of the Rings. It's this iconic, incredible music that's now been in like 12 different trailers. But so I don't know if it was him or not, because Giacchino didn't come on board until like last second on that movie. So it wasn't him. So I don't even know if it was the original composer that did it, or if it was something that just the trailer company themselves had composed in-house, or maybe licensed. It's a good question, but I'm not sure. That is a really good question, though, Drew. I'm going to keep that one in mind. All right, Dan Ketchum writes, just saw this 10-year-old thing with Gwyneth Paltrow singing Conjunction Junction. Talk about smoking. How did this wonderful thing escape my notice before now? Which wonderful thing? Are you talking wonderful thing of Conjunction Junction, or just the wonderful thing about just how incredibly hot Gwyneth Paltrow is? Because, yeah, she was like one of the standards of what it meant to be just gorgeous in Hollywood. Like, you know, talk around. There are some people like a Javier Bardem or a Gwyneth Paltrow or a Margot Robbie or whatever who are just, male or female, just so unfairly good looking. It just makes you wonder about the nature of the universe. But yeah, she's up there, man. She's totally up there. All right. Drew H. writes, I was disappointed to hear that the Purge series is canceled. I heard about that too. I thought the show far exceeded anything the movies did, especially the second season. They really expanded the Purge universe and really got me invested in the story and characters. I never did watch the Purge show. I got into, what was it, the second or third, might have been the second Purge movie. It's the guy who played Romolo in Civil War. And I can't remember, I don't know why I'm freezing on the actor's name right now. But it's the first movie he was in for the series. And it was great. And then I went to go see the next one, which was terrible. And I kind of lost all interest in the Purge universe after that. And so I never did check out the show, but I heard from a lot of people that it was quite good. And I was thinking about checking it out, and then heard recently that they pulled the plug on it, which is unfortunate. All right, James Germain writes, hey, John, just the other day I was looking through my Amazon Prime to find something to watch, and lo and behold, I found a movie that deserves a reboot, Beastmaster. We talked about Beastmaster like a month or two ago. John, do you think that they will ever reboot this movie franchise? Keep it healthy. Well, here's the thing. You guys know what I'm going to say, right? Whenever you use the word ever, the answer is always yes. Will they ever reboot this? Well, ever could be 20 years from now, ever could be 50 years from now, or 100 years from now. Sure, at some point, everything's going to get rebooted. But I'll say this, I don't see it getting rebooted anytime soon. That style of movie was a product of its era. And this era is not an era where audiences would accept something like that at face value, unless you did a lot of heavy adaptation. But I think it was great for its era. It's an 80s era movie, but I don't think it's one that would work necessarily today. But everything's in cycles, man. And at some point, movies like that might come back into fashion. And if it does, then yeah, I think they will at some point. Just not in the immediate future. That's all. Just not in the immediate future. All right. Christopher Ammett writes, hey, John, I just remember that I sent you a question about a potential Zoolander sequel and realized that I've been following you since 2013. Keep up the amazing work from the broom closet at AMC to your spare bedroom at your house. Bring on the filthy. Oh my God, that is going back away when people write. I remember somebody got in touch with me recently telling me, man, I still remember writing you an email on during the movie blog days, asking about the Hobbit, that they're going to be doing the Hobbit, and what do you think about the Hobbit, and blah blah blah. It's like, I can't believe I've been following you for that long, because now Hobbits are old movies now. It is kind of crazy how long we've been doing this. So thanks for that, Christopher. I appreciate that, man. All right, next up, Christopher also writes, "Hey John, what makes a dark side user's eyes change color? This has been the topic of a lot of debates. What makes a dark side user's eyes change color? Is it the anger or connection to the dark side? In Rise of the Sith, Anakin's eyes change, or Revenge of the Sith, Anakin's eyes changed on Mustafar. However, Kylo Ren's eyes never changed. Did Kylo have to murder a bunch of younglings? I don't know. Listen, there have been things they were tried to address in various Legends novels that try to address it. I don't know, honestly, off the top of my head, if it's ever been definitively said, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, it reminds me of that whole thing. Remember when they did that stupid thing in Star Wars about what makes a Sith sky lightsaber red? Ooh, they bleed the crystal. They turned kyber crystals, the power of the lightsaber, into mood stones. You're in a bad mood? The stone changes color to fit your mood. It was one of the most idiotic things ever. It is what it is. I didn't care. I brushed it off and I don't worry about it, but it was really stupid. So I don't know if there's ever been official canon explanation for about, wait a minute, why did his eyes suddenly turn yellow and why were they not yellow later on in the movie? That's a good question. Just another thing I try not to think about, but it's a great observation. All right. Major Tom writes, "Hey, John, I'm currently on emergency leave from work until Sunday. I get paid for it, though, so that's a plus. Anyway, I decided to watch all the Rocky movies. I never actually saw the original film before. It was amazing. Love the movie, too. Listen, I had a friend of mine that was in the same situation. I think the first Rocky movie this buddy of mine had ever seen was Rocky 3 with Clubber Lang, with Mr. T, right? They never seen Rocky 1 or 2, and it was only just a couple of years ago that they actually went back to watch Rocky 1 and 2, and they're like, holy crap! I'm like, dude, the first Rocky was like a Best Picture thing at the Oscars, right? Really? And it's weird to think today of Rocky like being a Best Picture contender. Any Rocky movie, because we all think of Rocky from Rocky 3 and then Rocky 4 with Ivan Drago, and we try to forget about Tommy Gunn and Rocky 5 and then Rocky Balboa, but they were like prestige movies. They were like prestige movies. They're really good. And I think Stallone himself, did he not win Best Screenwriter? Let me bring it. I want to say that Stallone won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay. And I'm not really sure. Hold a second. It won. Okay, he didn't win for Best Screen. So it won Best Picture and Best Director and Best Editing. Stallone got nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role. Talia Shire got nominated for Best Actress in a Leading Role. Burgess Meredith, Mickey, got nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. And Burt Young got nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. And Stallone did get nominated for Best Screenplay. A lot of people forget Sylvester Stallone is an Academy Award nominated screenwriter. He got nominated for an Academy Award. What movie won Best Picture? And a lot of people forget about that when talking about movies. So when talking about Rocky, the first one. So I am glad you went back to check that one out. All right. Next up here. Where are we at? Damo Davies writes, "How bonkers is the movie Being John Malkovich? Incredibly bonkers. I love this movie and think it doesn't get talked about enough. It was so imaginative and original. There is certainly no movie quite like it. Do you like this movie, Malkovich? Honestly, I don't. I'm one of the few people I know that wasn't a big fan of Being John Malkovich. However, I say that while agreeing with everything else you said about it. There is no other movie quite like Being John Malkovich. It was powerfully original. It was different, and it was a weird concept, and it was bonkers, and they couldn't have revolved a movie like that around a better personality than a John Malkovich. Now, personally, at the end of the day, I didn't think it was executed quite as well as the bonkers concept, but I agree with all the other things you said about it. It's beautifully original. And there's never been another film really like it. At least I certainly can't think of another film that's ever really been quite like it. They went for something really different and they succeeded. And when you do that, you're going to get people that really love it. You're going to get some people that it doesn't work for quite as well. And that's fine. But they were trying to do something incredibly original. And on that level, they absolutely pulled that off. All right. Damo Davies also writes, have you ever seen the Spider-Man outtake from the bloopers reel on the original X-Men movie? It was originally included as an Easter egg on the DVD, but now readily available on YouTube. Really funny. I have not. Hold a second. Let me bring something up here. I'm going to go over to YouTube right now because I'm dying to see this. Spider-Man outtakes X-Men DVD. All right. So, all right. Spider-Man and X-Men blooper behind the scenes cameo DVD Easter egg. Never knew it was there before. If I did, I totally forgotten about it, but I got it queued up now, so I will definitely check that out a little bit later, Damo. Thanks for sending that in, man. All right, next up, Damo Davies also writes, have you ever seen the documentary From Star Wars to Jedi? I've never seen that one, no. The Making of a Saga. I know that many people think Empire of Dreams is the best documentary. It pretty much is, of the original trilogy, but this one is very good too. It's free to view on YouTube. No, I've not seen that one myself, but yeah, the Empire of Dreams is fantastic, which I believe is also available on YouTube to be seen. I think that's on YouTube as well, where you can go see it. Excellent. But that's another one for people to go check out. Thank you for putting that on people's radars, Damo. All right. Dr. Doombot writes, hey, John, a follow-up to our talk about The Office. I'm from Denmark. So when they did the bit with the Danish version of The Office documentary, I was laughing hard. A mix of gibberish, really bad pronouncing, and something actually pretty close. Bonus fun. Listen, I can completely relate, because as a Canadian, whenever I see something in movies or television shows that I love that even remotely references Canada, I geek out, right? Like, for instance, we were talking about Deadpool earlier. There's a scene in Deadpool when he's taking out all the guys on the highway, and he says, Wade Wilson from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, or from Regina, Saskatchewan, because I lived in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is only like an hour and a half from Regina. But anyway, from Regina, Saskatchewan, lies down. I'm like, oh, that's a Canada reference, and I get all excited about it. So yeah, if you're watching The Office and they do a whole thing on your country, that's pretty cool. I remember when The Simpsons went to Canada, right? It was a huge deal in my house. It was a huge deal in my house. It's kind of silly, but that's how we feel about that stuff. So I can totally relate, dude. All right, Ryan Lohner writes, when Mando meets Bo-Katan, what? No, we can totally take our helmets off whenever we want. Who told you that? Pretentious hipsters? Yeah, so a lot of people, listen, a lot of people have been asking ever since Mandalorian started. Well, wait a minute. There's nothing, we've seen them in Rebels and in Clone Wars. The Mandalorians take their helmets off all the time. True. But remember, even in those shows, there is clansmanship within the Mandalorian. There are clans in the Mandalorian, right? And it could be that this is a particular offshoot clan that maybe has that particular creed, that maybe not all Mandalorian culture does. And remember, a number of these Mandalorians were younglings, were orphans, that are not Mandalorian by race, they're Mandalorian by creed. So yes, that has always been a big question mark. And if indeed, they have Bo-Katan in more than a 5-minute appearance, which I'm not sure they will, but if they do, that will probably get referenced. Because I believe Katie Sackhoff will have her helmet off. And so that's going to have to be explained about why she, as a Mandalorian, can have her helmet off and Mando can't. So I think they'll probably address that. I think they will address that in the show, but it's a good point. All right. Brent Rohr writes, hey, John, Aaron, Robert, and Chris. Miss you, Chris. Been a fan since AMC. I was just wondering what you think of the Space Force flag. I sent you a tweet showing how it looks like a Death Star behind the Starfleet Federation badge, but I know you're busy. Well, listen, I saw it. I had thousands of people sending me that image. Listen, I am not going to make any comment, because I try to avoid, listen, that is ultimately a political thing, because it's being done by a certain administration, and I do my best on the show to avoid any topics of politics, because here, whether we're right or left, we're all movie fans together. We are fellow movie fans together, and so I try to avoid a lot of the political stuff. Now, there are some things people consider politics that aren't politics. They're just basic human decency issues. Those things I will talk about, but other things like politics, I will withhold comment. So, because if I say anything positively or negatively about this flag, people with their political skewing will take it positively or negative and think I'm attacking one position or the other, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to avoid the question altogether. With respect, I'm going to avoid the question altogether. All right, Diamond Dog's Puppy writes, hey, John, today underappreciated film is 1993's A Perfect World, starring Kevin Costner, Laura Dern, and Clint Eastwood. Eastwood also directed this dark yet hopeful road film of friendship, guilt, and building sympathy for a complex killer. Thoughts? Never saw it. Never saw that one. Actually, let me make sure I'm thinking of the right film, because I very well could be thinking of the wrong film. A Perfect World. And it is the movie I was thinking of. You know what? This is a 93 film. So it's like 27 years old. This is one I never did see. It's probably the only Clint Eastwood directed film I haven't seen. I think it's the only one. And I'm a big fan of Kevin Costner and Laura Dern and Clint Eastwood. So you'd think I would watch it. At some point, I really do need to, but I have not seen the film up till now. So thank you for reminding me of it and putting it back on my radar, Diamond Dog. I appreciate that. All right, Dr. Doombot writes, John, when Bruce Campbell makes his inevitable cameo in Doctor Strange, you know it's going to happen. In the Multiverse of Madness, are you over or under 10% that it will be as Evil Dead's Ash? It won't be. It'll be under 10% on that. The king of all things groovy. The character actually somewhat exists in the Marvel Zombies universe. Yeah, but that's not this. So no, I don't think so. I'm going to go, while I will not say zero, I'm not going to say 0%. Because anything's possible when you got the crazy minds of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell getting together to do something. And I'm 100% that Bruce Campbell will make an appearance in Doctor Strange. 100%. But I'm going to actually go under 10 that it'll actually be as Ash. I don't know. Maybe he'll just be, a clerk, a store clerk in an S-Mart. Who knows? But honestly, I don't think it'll be Ash. I think it'll just be some rando thing, kind of like they did with him in Spider-Man, but I don't think it'll be Ash, but wouldn't it be funny if they did? All right. Tampa Bay Succaneers writes, don't know why people think the same day VOD is the future. Scoob, Trolls 2, Artemis Fowl, Lovebirds, and King of Staten Island don't look any good and probably would have flopped. Let's see if studios put anything bigger on VOD before you say that. Well, listen, I agree. I don't think that's why. Listen, studios are greedy. They want every dollar they can get. If they thought for 1 second, with all of their research and all of their market studies and all their stuff, if they thought for 1 second that they could make $1 more by putting Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness out on VOD instead of in theaters, oh, you bet your damn ass they would do it. You bet your ass they would do it. But they don't because they know that's not where the real money's made. The real money is made in theaters. They know it. Now, that may change years from now, but today that is still where we're at. That's still where we're at. Jay writes, 1 of 2. After watching 4 through 6 and 1 on VHS, the first Star Wars film I saw at the cinema was Attack of the Clones. I was 8. My mom bought me the 20 Jedi Apprentice Scholastic book set on the way home. I fell in love with that EU series as much as the films. Those books were marketed as authentic Star Wars stories, not EU. They had no disclaimer about canon in them. I've checked. It's frustrating that Lucasfilm appears not to have learned from the Legends debacle. Why put out so much content if it's going to contradict? Well, look, you bring up a question that is still hotly discussed in hardcore Star Wars circles, which is the fate of the EU, also now known as Legends, right? For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, between, Return of the Jedi and when Star Wars was bought by Disney, there was a lot of novels and a lot of books written and all that kind of stuff that were considered extended universe, right? The thing is, they were never canon. They were never real, right? They were never real. They weren't true stories that were actually happening in the same reality as the ones we saw in the movies. They were all just kind of Elseworld stuff. Now, Lucasfilm at the time had this real jarbled, ridiculous system that they had different levels of canon. And you know what I think about that? That's bullshit. Canon is canon. It's something is either canon or it's not. A girl is not sort of pregnant. No, she's either pregnant or she's not pregnant. She's not sort of pregnant, but Lucasfilm for a lot of time had this total jarbled mess of different levels of canon. There was this level of canon, this level of canon, this level of canon, and this level's not as important as this one, and this one's not as important as this one, and blah, 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 blah. And it was denoted by all these letters. The only true canon, the real Star Wars, was stuff that they called G canon, the letter G, which actually, yes, did stand for George. It was actual G level canon was the only stuff that was actually canon. Everything else was sort of canon, but not really canon. And it had all these different levels of it. So when Disney took over Star Wars, one of the first big controversies at the time was Disney swept away the extended universe. Their main objective was to bring clarity to a situation, was to say what is really canon and what is not. And so they took what I felt was the correct approach by saying we are doing away with all this stuff and properly labeling it as legends. Not real stories, but just fun stories in the Star Wars universe, even though it's not really in the real Star Wars universe. And a lot of people got very, very upset. Because they would say things like, you took these stories out of canon. It's like, no, my friend, they never were in canon. Even when Lucasfilm was still on its own entity, those stories you're talking about never were canon in the first place. They never were. To which I had one friend of mine say, well, to me they were. Well, okay, that's fine. I can't argue with you over that. If to you it was canon, then to you it was canon. I respect that. But from Lucasfilm's point of view, it was never true canon. So all Disney did was, when they took it over, was they clarified what is canon and what was not. Now, they had a very lofty goal when they started. The lofty goal was this: from now on, Disney said, and Lucasfilm now said, from now on, everything is canon. The video games you see are going to be canon. All the novels that come out are canon. Obviously, all the television and movies, which they were before anyway, all the television and movies are canon. And everything now moving forward is canon. No confusion. Everything's canon. Which at first, and I remember saying at first, I said, that's a really lofty goal, but it's unsustainable. You go back to the AMC days when this all came about. I said from the very beginning, this is lofty goals and admirable, and I like what they're going for. But the reality is it's not sustainable. Because once you start getting all these different stories being told by all these different people, contradictions are going to start to happen. It's unavoidable. And guess what? It's already happening. We see in novels contradictory statements to things that happen in movies, and then we get guys like the wonderful Pablo Hidalgo, but who's trying to defend it, even came out and said, well, when challenged with, wait a minute, there's a contradiction in this novel, and you guys said it's all canon. To which Pablo Hidalgo, what else is he supposed to say? He says, well, yeah, everything in the book is canon unless it contradicts something in the movie. Again, there's no such thing as sort of canon. Either the novel is canon or it's not. And if you've got a contradiction in the novel and you're saying, well, it is canon except for where it's not canon, that makes no sense. So I said from the beginning, while I admired what they were trying to do, it was never actually going to work. And so they've kind of thrown it out the window now, right? Now they did these, what was that Star Wars series they did with all the animated female characters, like Legends of the Force or something like that. It was about Leia and Rey and all these different characters. I mean, but those stories weren't canon. And a lot of things that have happened in the books have contradicted this. So it feels like they've kind of given up on it. It feels like they've given up on it. So I don't know. I think at some point maybe Disney needs to come out and say, you know what, guys, we had this lofty goal of everything's canon, but we weren't able to make it work. And so now the movies and the shows are true canon. The novels and everything are stories, which, you take them as you will. I don't know. I just feels like we're right back to square one. But again, this is a conversation that's gone on a lot and will probably go on a longer time. All right, guys, listen. That wraps us up for now. We've gone a little bit over 2 hours, so we need to wrap this up. There are still a number of questions we need to get to here today. Obviously, we started the show today 5 hours late because the internet was out in my neighborhood, and I apologize for that. So we've got more questions than normal all lined up and ready to go. So what I am going to do is I'm going to do a companion video a little bit later. It'll probably post later tonight. I'm going to get through every single one of the questions that is still left to be answered, both from the tips and from the super chats that came in. So if you guys want to keep your eyes on the channel a little bit later this evening, I'll put up a full, probably 2-hour long companion video. We will get through all of the rest of the questions because today was a very unusual day. And then, guys, don't forget that tomorrow, me and Robert Meyer Burnett will be back again for another episode of the John Campea Show. And that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Again, guys, thank you so much for your patience. We had those technical issues earlier. Again, I hate letting you guys down, especially when I say, we got a show at 9 o'clock, and then 9 o'clock comes and there's no show. Like I said, the internet was out in our neighborhood. I even tried, where's my phone? Oh, I left it downstairs. I even tried to turn on the hotspot on my phone and then connect the Wi-Fi of my computer to my phone to see if I could get enough bandwidth to make the show run, and there was not enough bandwidth. So we just had to put the show off until 2 o'clock today when the internet was turned back on. So thank you for your patience and understanding with that, guys. I really appreciated it. And a special thank you to all you guys who sent in the questions, not just because you gave us great fun things to talk about, but also you supported the channel along the way as well. And that's why we're going to get to every single one of those questions you guys sent in. Guys, don't forget, join me and Robert again tomorrow. That will do it for me for now, guys. Remember, please do the 4 big important things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you, and we'll all get through this thing sooner rather than later. That does it for now. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. My name's John Campea. Until next time, my friends, bye-bye.